um, give an update on the shit show that is us, Iraq, and the Middle East. Let me share this out. Let people know that I'm live. Give me a second, y'all. Speed this up.
Many veterans are now fighting a new enemy, mesothelioma. A diagnosis is emotional, frightening.
Come on.
And they know it.
Here we go.
Or at least soon enough, they will know it. And we have only just begun to hunt, dismantle, demoralize, destroy, and defeat their capabilities. Just 4 days in. Starting last night and to be completed in a few days, in under a week, the two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. I hope all the folks watching understand what uncontested airspace and complete control means.
The last name.
It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the RGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over. And Iran
Wait a minute, until you decide it's over.
About it. B-2s, B-52s, B-1s.
Wait a minute, I gotta pause that. Until y'all decide it's over. Sir, by the looks of things, you guys are at a potential to get your ass kicked. And you talking about you're not gonna stop until we say it's over? Sounds like arrogance to me.
Drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky, all day long. We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. Thus far, Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003, minus Paul Bremer and the nation building. The campaign has 7 times the intensity of Israel's previous operations against Iran during the 12-day war, 7 times. And as President Trump said, more and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating. Iran's capabilities are evaporating by the hour, while American strength grows fiercer, smarter, and utterly dominant. More bombers and more fighters are arriving just today. And now, with complete control of the skies, we will be using 500-pound, 1,000-pound, and 2,000-pound GPS and laser-guided precision gravity bombs, of which we have a nearly unlimited stockpile. We used more exquisite standoff munitions at the start, but no longer need to. Our stockpiles of those, as well as Patriots, remains extremely strong. The enemy can no longer shoot the volume of missiles they once did, not even close. And the chairman will lay out some of those percentages. So our air defenses and that of our allies have plenty of runway. We can sustain this fight easily for as long as we need to. And as I said yesterday, we set the terms. Now, you may not see much of it because the IRGC shut off the internet to the entirety of the country. They blind their people on purpose, just like they kill their own on purpose. Much was made of the volume of missiles Iran was able to shoot in the first few days. And sadly, as we projected, a few got through and killed 6 of our best, who will hopefully arrive home soon. We will avenge them, no doubt. But I liken Iran's predicament to a football team who scripted the first 20 plays of a game. The team knew what plays to run because their first few drives were scripted. But now that the game has started and the blitz is on, they don't know what plays to call, let alone how to get in the huddle and call those plays. Iran's senior leaders are dead. The so-called governing council that might have selected a successor, dead, missing, or cowering in bunkers, too terrified to even occupy the same room. Senior generals, mid-level officers, enlisted ranks, they can't talk or communicate, let alone mount a coordinated and sustained offensive. That's not great for morale. The Iranian Air Force is no more, built for 1996, destroyed in 2026. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated, pick your adjective. In fact, last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice. Their Navy, not a factor. Pick your adjective, it is no more. In fact, yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters.
Grandson just exposed a secret the Social Security office doesn't want seniors to know. This year's Social Security increase is the biggest in years, yet thousands are missing it because they didn't pick up the phone. Thousands of seniors got their Social Security increase approved this week.
It was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win. Also, yesterday, the leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh. Now, this is not a mission accomplished situation. This is simply a reality check. The combination of U.S. and Israeli intelligence and combat power will control Iran, and will control it soon. Sure, Iran will still be able to shoot some missiles, and still be able to launch one-way attack drones at civilian targets, and their proxies will attempt to attack our embassies, bases, and soft targets. They are terrorists, after all, and they need to target civilians because they can't fight toe-to-toe. But we will find them, and we will kill them. This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through, or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality. The terms of this war will be set by us at every step. As I said Monday, the mission is laser focused. Obliterate Iran's missiles and drones and facilities that produce them, annihilate its navy and critical security infrastructure, and sever their pathway to nuclear weapons. Iran will never possess a nuclear bomb, not on our watch, not ever. And this is why President Trump's moral clarity on Iran today is so vital. Unlike the past, where vague red lines and endless negotiations let Iran fund terror and inch ever so slightly toward a bomb, this president sees the threat plainly and acts decisively. No more half measures, especially when Iran is at its weakest. No more letting Tehran play for time while our people pay the price. His leadership ensures that we finish what we start, and that we protect our warfighters by crushing the enemy before they can strike again. Our offensive operations, refined through months of relentless preparation, are unstoppable. And our defensive efforts are unprecedented. We have from the start put the protection of our troops ahead of everything else. Before we very publicly built up offensive combat power, we quietly ensured that our defensive posture and power was in place. And as we built up offensive combat power, we moved the vast majority of American troops, over 90% of Americans that were on our bases, what we say off the X, out of the range of Iranian fire. Our defensive shield is equally.
Just because you move them off base don't mean that the Iranians cannot still get to them.
Formidable. The most sophisticated air and missile defense network ever fielded. Thousands of Iranian missiles and drones have been intercepted and vaporized. Tens of thousands of American and allied lives protected. We have pushed every counter-UAS system possible forward, sparing no expense or capability. And like I said, this does not mean we can stop everything, but we ensured that the maximum possible defense and maximum possible force protection was set up before we went on offense. In closing, as President Trump told German Chancellor Merz yesterday, Iran negotiated in bad faith, stalling, scheming, and preparing to strike. And we acted decisively to defend our people, our interests, and our allies. President Trump took bold action, putting America first, the kind of bold action that the American people elected him to execute. To our steadfast partner, Israel, your mission is being executed with unmatched skill and iron determination. Fighting shoulder to shoulder with such a capable ally is a true force multiplier and a breath of fresh air. We salute your courage.
I'm going to say this louder. I'm going to say this clear. Iran was none of our business. I don't care what nobody says.
And your contribution. 4 days in, we have only just begun to fight. America fights to win. And in Operation Epic Fury, we are. May God's providence cover and protect our troops always. And with that, I turn it over to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm here today to provide the American people and those of you in this room an update on Operation Epic Fury. First, it's with profound sadness and gratitude that I share the names of 4 of our 6 fallen heroes, all from the 103rd Sustainment Command, U.S. Army Reserves out of Des Moines, Iowa. Captain Cody Cork, Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amore, and Sergeant Declan Cody. To the families of our fallen, we grieve with you today, and we look forward to welcoming your family members home at Dover in the coming days. Out of respect for the other families, we'll withhold the release of their names until next of kin notification is complete. And either myself or Admiral Cooper will release those names as soon as we can ensure that all of those families have been properly notified. To our Gold Star families, to our wounded warriors and their loved ones, we will never forget your sacrifice. Our nation stands with you, and we are eternally grateful for your courage, your resiliency, your devotion to this mission and to our nation. As the Secretary said, we're 4 days in, 103 hours into this campaign. The operation was again launched with clear military objectives designed to dismantle Iran's ability to project power outside of its borders, both today and in the future. First, we are targeting and eliminating Iran's ballistic missile systems to prevent them from threatening the U.S. Forces, partners, and interests in the region. Second, we are destroying the Iranian Navy, degrading its capacity, capability, and ability to conduct operations, not just in the Central Command AOR, but as the Secretary showed in the video, around the world. Third, we're ensuring Iran cannot rapidly rebuild or reconstitute its combat capability or combat power, and those phases will begin as the campaign continues. As of this morning, U.S. Central Command is making steady progress. Iran's theater ballistic missile shots fired are down 86% from the first day of fighting, with a 23% decrease just in the last 24 hours. And their one-way attack drone shots are down 73% from the opening days. This progress has allowed CENTCOM to establish localized air superiority across the southern flank of the Iranian coast and penetrate their defenses with overwhelming precision and firepower. We will now begin to expand inland, striking progressively deeper into Iranian territory and creating additional freedom of maneuver for U.S. forces. Let me explain a little bit about how we're thinking about staying ahead of the enemy. First, over the past several weeks, Admiral Cooper and the CENTCOM team have refined their operational approach to the region. Their planners identified key centers of gravity that would allow Iran to project power outside of its borders. They thought about how to isolate critical vulnerabilities and determined where, with precision, the greatest strategic effect could be achieved. As a result of this, CENTCOM is now shifting in day 4 already from large deliberate strike packages using standoff munitions at range outside an enemy's ability to shoot at us, now into stand-in precision strikes overhead Iran. As the Secretary said, this is a point of munitions transition from standoff munitions to stand-in munitions like Joint Direct Attack munitions, which are GPS-aided free-fall weapons, and other things like Hellfires, etc. This will allow the joint force to deliver significantly increased precision effects on the target. The throttle is coming up, as the Secretary said, as opposed to ramping down. This will allow us to maintain consistent pressure on the adversary over the coming days, disrupt their launch timelines, and impose cost every day around the clock. I know there have been a lot of questions about munitions. We have sufficient precision munitions for the task at hand, both on the offense and defense. But I want to tell you, teammates, as a matter of practice, I don't want to be talking about quantities. And I know there's been a great debate about that, and I appreciate the interest, but just know that we consider that an operational security matter. Let me flip to the map here. Hopefully I don't kill anybody with a laser pointer. As I mentioned earlier, and for you with the camera right there, my friend, I hope I don't ricochet off and hurt you. Over the initial days, the U.S. Joint Forces continued to attack and attrit ballistic missile capabilities as well as integrated air defense capabilities along the southern axis. Along the northern axis, Israel and the Israeli Air Force has predominantly been working integrated air defense targets along the northern flank, as well as medium-range ballistic missile capability as well. From the sea, the USS Ford has continued to project combat power here, as well as the bomber pulses that we talked about in the opening days of this briefing. Along the southern axis, the USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group has continued to provide pressure from the sea along the southeastern side of the coast and has been attriting naval capability all along the strait and up into the Arabian Gulf at a size and scale sufficiently to address the targets required. To date, we've hit over 2,000 targets, as Admiral Cooper said in his video last night. We've destroyed more than 20 Iranian naval vessels, including, in addition to the frigate outside of the area, one submarine, and effectively neutralized at this point in time Iran's major naval presence in theater out there. As the Secretary showed the video, for the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine.
You have been listening to the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They're updating us on the war in Iran from the Pentagon. The highlights there from the Secretary of Defense, especially: America is winning. More forces are arriving. We've only just begun, promising death and destruction from the skies in Iran. Joining us now to offer some more insight insight into the U.S. military operations. We're joined now by retired Colonel Steve Warren, an NBC News military analyst, former Pentagon spokesman as well. Colonel, thank you so much for being here with us. We're getting a sense of what we've been able to accomplish over the first 4 days or so. Were you able to get a sense of where the war effort goes from here?
Yes, it's interesting. They really focused on how well American forces have dismantled Iranian air defenses, how Americans now have unrestricted movement inside Iranian airspace. So what that means, in my view, is that they will now use precision-guided munitions to strike very specific targets in order to reduce the Iranians' capability to rebuild what we've already destroyed.
Precision gravity bombs. We heard the chairman of the Joint Chiefs talk about that. What are those? How significant of a role could those play?
They're going to play a massive role. These are very good weapons, very inexpensive. Up until now, we've been using long-range precision missiles, very high cost, very sophisticated. These gravity bombs, they can be dropped out of a B-52 bomber, close in, and much higher hit rate.
It was also interesting to hear the chairman talk about the Iranian military capabilities and how much they've been degraded over the first few days. He said roughly 86% missiles are down, 86% since the first day.
Yeah, that's right. And he's also mentioned that he sunk half the Navy, right? A huge chunk of the Navy. First U.S. Navy torpedo shot since World War II, according to the Secretary. Really impressive.
Colonel Standby Fourmay, joined now by our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. He is live for us in Israel. And Richard, I know that you've been talking to people inside Iran. What are they telling you about what they expect, what they anticipate as these days are set to turn into weeks?
So the Iranian regime still does have its supporters, and we've seen tens of thousands of people on the streets. But I managed to speak to several Iranians, and that is difficult because communications are so cut off. And they told me that they support that the Iranian clerical regime is under attack. They want to see it go. But they told me right now people are too afraid to go outside because state media has made it more than clear that if anyone goes out on the streets and tries to challenge the system in any way, they will be shot on spot.
Our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, for us there in the region. Richard is in Israel. Of course, Richard was actually in Iran just several weeks ago. Richard, thank you. Colonel, a big thanks to you as well. We'll be spending a lot of time with you over the next few days. Thank you for your time. Thank you as well. Stay with us for the latest updates throughout the day on NBC News Now, and of course, NBCnews.com. Again, that news conference from the Pentagon wrapping up as we speak. We heard from the Secretary of Defense, heard from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs as well. We'll continue to keep you updated on the war in Iran, now in day 5. For now, though, I'm Craig Melvin here in New York. This has been an NBC News Special Report.
Pittsburgh is built to perform. From America's #1 selling floor jacks to sockets.
You've been listening to that NBC News special report as we cover this press conference here with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, as well as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane. Let's listen in as they begin to take questions in the room.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire.
For the past 40 years of his life, this is
We're going to go to the White House press briefing now. With that being said, here is the White House press briefing.
Attack our country and are seeking to destroy Western civilization itself. These terrorists seized our embassy and took 66 Americans hostage in Tehran. They slaughtered 241 U.S. service members with a truck bombing in Beirut. They killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. And this is just a small fraction of their blood-soaked record. Prior leaders have been too weak and ineffective to address this threat. Some, like Barack Hussein Obama, even said...
So the press secretary there kind of talking through some of the run-up to this.
Why did she have to say it's full government? Why would these MAGA people, they got to emphasize his middle name? Why?
to bring in Monica Alba, who's joining us now, because Monica, there have been a number of developments here. We heard from the defense secretary earlier this morning about some of the military operations here. We know that there is an immediate need to try to get Americans out of the region who are effectively stranded there, Monica. They are stuck, and the State Department has been working on this. The president, when pressed about this, suggested it's because the strike happened so quickly, they were not able to evacuate properly.
Exactly, Hallie. And I was just told by a White House official that they have identified about 1,600 Americans who have expressed interest in leaving the region from those countries. The State Department is urging U.S. citizens essentially to create a profile with them so that they can be in touch to see when they might be able to get out on these chartered flights that so far we're waiting for more details on, more information. But I'm told by this White House official that obviously they don't want to go into tremendous detail on when these chartered flights may be taking place because they are nervous about providing any of that as a security risk to those Americans, as they say they know that the Iranians and their retaliation so far in the last couple of days have been targeting certainly U.S. embassies, consulates, and other U.S. interests, U.S. bases in the region. So that seems like it is an effort that's underway, but that has been a bit of a scramble, as you know, Hallie, and the president did acknowledge that yesterday, saying that there wasn't time to implement a comprehensive evacuation plan, he says, because of how quickly this all came together. So yesterday, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other top officials really stressing that this situation is fast moving and quickly changing, and that there is a risk to any U.S. citizen that is leaving the Middle East and that wants to head back to the United States. Initially, they were told they should take commercial flights if they could, but the problem with that was that many of the airports in these countries and the airspace over them has remained closed, and dozens of flights have been canceled and have even been postponed all the way out to a couple of weeks from now in the case of some of these countries and airports. So we do know in the case of several American citizens who have expressed a willingness to leave, they are in touch with the State Department. They are hoping for more details about when they are able to get out. The State Department, for its part, Hallie, says that there already have been thousands of Americans in the last couple of days who have been able to depart either through commercial means or otherwise. But this does come at a moment where there are also a lot of persistent questions about some of the different comments that this administration has been making in terms of what exactly contributed to the president's final decision making and ordering these initial strikes in conjunction with Israel. Yesterday, the president was asked whether Israel forced his hand. We're now learning new details that there was a fairly pivotal, consequential phone call from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about 9 days ago, so last Monday, to the president, where he informed him that there was going to be a meeting of the Ayatollah and other senior Iranian officials on Saturday morning, Tehran time. And it was that intelligence that later seemed to be corroborated by the CIA and other U.S. intelligence assessments that led the president to really try to strike at that exact opportunity, at the fact that so many of those leaders were going to be in the same place at the same time. And as we know, that was conducted in broad daylight as opposed to a strike overnight, again, because of that meeting. And it sounds like some of that initial information first did come from the Israeli prime minister, who for months has been warning the president, urging the president to take this threat seriously. But again, Hallie, there are a lot of questions that I'm sure are going to be asked in that room about the sequence of events here and what actually did lead to the president giving the green light on Friday into Saturday night. And something else, Hallie, that we're also digging into as well is this larger question of whether the president has done everything he needs to inform the American people of why he took this decision. He has offered remarks. He has taken questions from reporters now, but there hasn't been a large address or a large speech laying out some of the objectives in more detail and the end game as well. We know that in terms of the timeline, you had defense officials this morning stressing this could be 4 or 5 weeks or longer. But one of the other major open-ended areas of all of this is the question of munitions, the question of defensive weaponry. And we know that the White House, Hallie, has invited defense contractors, executives from some of the biggest ones, to come to the White House on Friday for a meeting specifically to talk about weapons and their production and potentially ramping that up, given all of the munitions that are being used currently in this effort and other military engagements around the world. And we know for now that the president claims that munitions are in well supply, that there is enough stockpiled to last, quote, forever. But there are mounting concerns that certainly this conflict, as long as it goes, could put a pressure point on that.
Monica Alba, we're going to ask you to stand by here. Caroline Levitt going through what's often called the topper, the remarks that she'll make before taking questions from reporters. We'll dip back in for that Q&A, but now she is reiterating what we have heard from top Trump administration officials, that they believe Iran had rejected any kind of path toward peace. Our chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, is joining us now from Dubai. And Keir, pick up on the thread that Monica laid out there that I imagine we're going to hear from the press secretary in a couple of seconds here about getting Americans out of the region and about the spiraling, the widening now of this war as it is escalating.
Seniors are furious because they didn't know about the new Social Security increase they were supposed to receive last week. I always
now of this war as it is escalating.
Yeah, widening and therefore taking in more Americans. So to give folks watching a picture of just the size of this, here in the United Arab Emirates, 50,000 Americans live here. Saudi Arabia, 70,000 Americans live there. And you've got Qatar and Kuwait and Bahrain. The numbers of people who live here, aside from the numbers, and this who you're hearing from a lot of the time, the numbers of people who are here on vacation or for business and are trying to get back to families, which is different, of course, that is impactful and important. And so I've been speaking to Americans. One, for example, a father, his son turns 1 today. Back in Tampa, he's missing that. He's going to the airport right now. He's across Dubai, just across over there somewhere. He's on his way to the airport. We're speaking to him to try and get a flight. He's packed and gone to catch flights a number of times this week, only to not be able to catch one. He's phoned the hotline, the State Department hotline. He says, Marco Rubio said, call this line. I call it, and it just tells me to look after myself, to get my own flight. So hopefully he's going to get back because his son's birthday party is on Sunday.
I'm not surprised.
Now, another couple that I spoke to earlier in the week who were here for their 20th wedding anniversary and got caught up in all of this, they've now got to Asia. They've managed to get out, and they are trying to get back to Tennessee. So they are certainly managing to make progress. They say when they landed, they got a message from the State Department talking about the chartered flight that might be available to them soon. We haven't been able to contact them to get exactly the details of what they were told about that. But yeah, certainly people have been taking things into their own hands.
Let me just interrupt you here. I'm sorry, Keir. Let me just interrupt you because the press secretary is talking about how Americans can actually try to get back. Let's listen for a second.
As time goes on and the success of this mission further comes to fruition. I know the President and Secretary of State Rubio have been in touch as well with our allies in the region directly about this problem, making it clear that it is a priority of the United States of America to bring every American home. The Trump administration will not rest until every American is home safely and until the terrorist threat from Iran has been completely destroyed. With that, I'll take your questions. Eric, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. And as you mentioned, Iran's regime, its leadership has largely been decimated. We have a sense right now of who is actually calling the shots in Iran, and we're also hearing reports that the Supreme Leader's son may be named his successor. Do you have any more information about that? I just had a quick follow-up as well.
Sure. We've seen those reports as well, of course, and this is something that our intelligence agencies are closely monitoring and looking at. The truth is, we'll have to wait and see. The president has said repeatedly that the objectives of Operation Epic Fury are the 4 military objectives that I laid out for you previously: to destroy Iran's navy, to destroy their ballistic missile capacity, to ensure their proxies in the region can no longer harm Americans, and to also ensure that they can never obtain a nuclear weapon. As for what comes next for Iran, the president has said, of course, it's a good thing for the United States to want freedom for the Iranian people, and ultimately we hope that freedom rests in their hands.
Caroline, we see the Arab and Muslim nations coming under fire as well. President Trump's vision for the region has been to bring the Arab and Muslim nations to the table together, Abraham Accords, obviously, with Israel. If this regime topples, could we see a new day in the region and really a new Middle East come out of this when the dust settles?
Well, the greatest deterrent to true and long-lasting peace in the Middle East has always been the rogue Iranian terrorist regime. And our Arab and Gulf partners in the nation admit that, as well as, of course, our close friend and ally Israel. We have seen all of the Arab partners in the region come together during this time on the phone with President Trump, many of them commending him for this bold and brave action to protect American troops and our bases in the region that are housed in many of these Arab and Gulf Gulf states. And I know that many of these regional partners are contributing their air defense capabilities as well. Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and the president continues to be engaged with all of them. Welcome. Garrett.
Also to Bill, humor me. Axios, I think, was the first to report this morning this phone call between the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that Netanyahu had given the U.S. this information about where the Ayatollah would be and that he'd be with his deputies on Saturday. How important was that information in the president making the decision to strike where and when he did?
I think it was important with respect to the timeline, but I think the president, prior to that phone call, had a good feeling that the Iranian regime was going to strike the United States assets and our personnel in the region. And the president was faced with a choice. Does the United States of America use our military and our capabilities to strike first, to take out this threat that has been threatening our country and our people for 47 years, or is he going to, as commander-in-chief, sit back and watch as the rogue Iranian regime attacks our people in the region? That's obviously an unacceptable decision. For the second choice there is unacceptable to the president, which is why he made this decision. As for where the Ayatollah was going to be, that obviously had an impact on the timeline of the operation, but not quite the president's decision in its entirety.
And then on the way the public is viewing this, we were sitting here last week. I asked you if the president was going to make this a big part of the State of the Union, if he felt like he had to sell the possibility that he'd do strikes like this. We're now 5 days on. He hasn't done kind of the traditional speech to the nation part of it. Does the president believe the country supports the actions that he's taken so far in Iran?
I think he does, and I think the president knows the country is smart enough to read past our allies and our people for 47 years. And the American people are smart enough to know that. And they've also been smart enough to listen to the president himself, not just over the past year in this second term, but during his first term as president, and also for the past 40 years of his life. This is a president who has been remarkably consistent on this issue, that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. And the president tried peace through diplomacy exhaustively and extensively. He and his team gave it their best go, and the president ultimately came to the determination of that peace was not a pursuable path. The Iranian regime, they want death, they want destruction, they want to kill Americans, and that's unacceptable to this president. It's intolerable to him as commander-in-chief. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. Obviously seen the update from the State Department on the 17,500 Americans that have already come back, including some 8,000 just yesterday. There are still 6,000 that are looking to get out, as I understand it. And just in the context of what you just told Garrett about the president's decision on a timeline, if he had decided to do this strike before receiving, the specific intelligence about the meeting on Saturday, should there have been more done in advance of the strikes to try to get those Americans in the region resources and information to get home before day 3 of the war?
There was many signs put out by the State Department, and I wish that everyone in this room would report on them. The Secretary of State issued level 4 travel advisories dating back to January for many of these countries in the region. On January 14th, the U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia advised personnel and Americans to exercise increased caution and limit non-essential travel to any military installations. On February 11th, the U.S. Department of State Consular Affairs shared a list of countries with level 4 do not travel advisories. And you can't be much more clear than that. Do not travel to these following countries. On February 23rd, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon ordered non-emergency government personnel and family members to leave Lebanon due to safety risks, and we helped them do that. On March 2nd, the State Department urged U.S. citizens to depart Lebanon immediately. With respect to Iran, on February 27th, the Secretary designated Iran as a state of sponsor of wrongful detention and stated no Americans should travel to Iran for any reason. And again, on February 27th, the U.S. ambassador to Israel warned Americans to leave Iran, and they provided travel advisory alerts through the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. So the State Department was all hands on deck on advising extreme caution and do not travel alerts to Americans in the region. With respect to the Americans who are still in the region now, again, the State Department is asking that they register at the website so they can directly identify you EU, and we are actively and rapidly working to charter flights. There is some commercial flights that are taking off intermittently from these countries, and we plan to get Americans on board as quickly as possible, again, free of charge to them. And we have some additional measures that I think will be announced in the coming days. Again, I can also reiterate from the president's perspective, this is something he's brought up directly with our allies and partners in the region, that we expect their help in getting Americans home, and we will do that, and we will not rest until every single American is returned home safely.
Thank you. And then one follow-up just on how people might be experiencing this at home. With respect to the economy and the cost of oil spiking, is there a need to start those Navy escorts in the Strait of Hormuz now to sort of blunt the impact to people? And also, because Spain is a member of the EU, does that at all put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo with them?
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the president's message yesterday loud and clear. And it's my understanding over the past several hours they've agreed to cooperate with the U.S. military. And so I know that the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain. But the president expects all of our European allies, of course, to cooperate in this long sought after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also threatens our European allies as well. With respect to oil prices and the economy here at home, of course, this is something that Secretary Bessent, Secretary Wright, the National Economic Council of Energy, that is led by Secretary Burgum, has been long working on and well in advance. Yesterday, President Trump announced the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will provide political risk insurance at a very reasonable price for crude carriers and cargo ships operating in and around the Gulf. And as you pointed out, Jackie, the president said if necessary and when appropriate, the U.S. Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. I think it speaks to why this action was so necessary, that ultimately the energy industry is going to benefit from the president's actions with respect to Iran, because Iran will no longer be controlling the Strait of Hormuz and restricting the free flow of energy, which, as you all know, controls 20% of the world's global oil supply. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday there wasn't time to make evacuation plans because this all happened so quickly. Given how critical the president has been of the chaotic evacuation from Afghanistan by the last administration 5 years ago, why wasn't there more of a focus on evacuation plans from the Middle East that could have been at least put in place, ready to go before the strikes this weekend?
Again, I just laid out for you that there have been plans in place and that the State Department has been very clear to the American people traveling within this region not to travel to these regions. We gave notices to leave immediately the countries where these Americans were within. And unlike the previous administration, we actually have a number. We actually have identified the number of people in the region who have requested help. We are in direct contact and engagement with them. And you have to keep in mind, there's a few thousand people who have requested assistance to come home in comparison to the millions who we understand are in the region. So we will help every single American who wants to come home if they're making that request of the State Department.
Americans who called the State Department hotline as recently as last night were being told, we can't help you, you have to make your own plans.
Well, the line was updated, and I expect every single person in this room to report on that accurately, so that information can be relayed appropriately to your audiences and to the American people. I think as journalists, you all have a responsibility to let them know that the line has been updated accordingly with the proper guidance, because I saw many people in this room very quick to do selfie videos with the line yesterday, but not so quick to report on the corrected message today. So that is something the administration...
Oh, go hell, Caroline. Go straight to damn hell.
quickly worked to address, and we have fixed that problem. However, we're also pointing to people to the website, again, to register so that we know exactly where you are. So when there are commercial flights moving into that area, when there are chartered flights moving into that area, we can get Americans on planes as quickly as possible.
Do you have any details on how many charter flights have been able to get out of the region so far with Americans on board?
I don't have an exact count for you, but I know that we're working on chartering many flights. As soon as we were doing it yesterday, we're doing it again today. And you should not expect us to detail exactly when these flights are taking off for obvious reasons. The Iranians have shown that they are not off, obviously. Danny.
Try Nature Made Zero Sugar Gummies.
The gummies you love, now with zero sugar.
Obvious reasons. The Iranians have shown that they are not, obviously. Danny.
At the top there, you said that the Iranian regime is being absolutely crushed. Can you explicitly say then whether or not regime change is a goal of President Trump's operation?
The goals of this operation have been made very clear, Danny, and the president has said them in his speech when he launched this operation and released that video in the middle of the night to all of you and to the world. The stated military objectives of Operation Epic Fury are as follows: eliminate Iran's ballistic missile threat, destroy their naval capability, disrupt missile and drone production infrastructure, sever their pathway and end their pathway to nuclear weapons. And I can report, as you all saw from the Pentagon today, that thus far this operation has been remarkably successful. Again, we're moving towards complete and total control of Iranian airspace. We have continuous 24/7 strike operations ongoing. We've had more than 2,000 targets that have been struck. Nearly 2,000 munitions have been employed. The first 24 hours of this campaign were described nearly as twice the scale of the 2003 shock and awe campaign. And we've seen that the enemy, the Iranian.
You know what? I am so done of this woman lying through her damn teeth. Let's go with this from MS Now.
MS Now's Julia Jester was at the Pentagon briefing this morning. Brett Bruin is a former U.S. diplomat who served as Director of Global Engagement and is President of the Global Situation Room Incorporated. With me in studio, MS Now National Security and Intelligence Analyst Chris O'Leary. He's Senior Vice President for Global Operations at the Soufan Group and was former Director of Hostage Recovery for the U.S. government. He also took part in the evacuation of Afghanistan in 2021. It is great to have all of you here. But Chris, let me start, since you've done this kind of work before. How do they get people out fast and safely?
So what should have happened was this should have been part of the initial planning, what's called a non-combatant evacuation operation, a NEO, which is synchronization between multiple government agencies, with the State Department and the Department of Defense taking the lead and planning for the logistics to have, lift available for every American that needs it to get out. That clearly wasn't done, and even the president himself, when he was with his German counterpart yesterday, said he was somewhat surprised about the regional effects, the response from Iran, and what's been set up has been haphazard, and I think symptomatic of what we see more broadly with this war. There's no two people telling you the same thing, and what you've done, what MS Now has done, is calling this hotline and demonstrating the fact that it's not giving people the comfort or direction that they need to get out of this crisis, and the threat is not abating. Clearly, the attack from Turkey or at Turkey is demonstrative of the fact that we're going to continue to see effects from the Iranian regime, which sees this as an existential threat.
So, Brett, I want to remind people of that message that the State Department was delivering as recently as 5 o'clock Eastern time yesterday afternoon. Here it is.
Are you getting less than $2,500 in Social Security and you're a senior on Medicare or Medicaid?
Eastern time yesterday afternoon. Here it is.
Please do not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation at this time. There are currently no United States evacuation points.
Well, as we noted, that line is manned now, but callers are being told to sign up online for alerts, to wait for the government to get back to them. No timeline at all. To Chris's point, could this have been better planned? Could there have been warnings? Could there have been something ready to go? And let me just ask you a final question, which is about nothing against contractors. Contractors serve an important role, but it almost sounds like they were just reading from a sheet. It's not like they're people who are experienced in the region and can provide answers.
Yeah, and Chris, to that point, the last thing that you want in this kind of dangerous situation is confusion, contradictory information. And unfortunately, that is what we have been getting over the last several days. We are now in the 5th day of this war, and Americans are just starting to get an inkling of how they or their relatives and friends and families could get out. And to the point earlier, yes, if Trump knew that he was going to launch this operation. One, you want to send as direct a message as you can to Americans. Get out of the region, avoid travel there, so you're reducing the number of people that you eventually have to evacuate in that non-combatant evacuation, the NEO that was mentioned before. But then on top of that, you have got to ensure that you're reassuring Americans so that they understand what the plan is. And I think what we have seen from the Trump administration are the costs of all of those cuts last year to the State Department, to the lack of leadership, to the departure of so many State Department experts in this kind of situation. So they're trying to recreate the arc as the floodwaters are coming over the top of the situation.
I want to pick up on that because there is a question about how many people are actually on the ground overseas to help. On Tuesday, the U.S. said it was recalling diplomatic staff from Pakistan, Cyprus, Oman, Saudi Arabia, 2 of those countries on that original list of 14. And we should note, of those 14 countries where people were told to evacuate, 7 of them, along with Iran, have no U.S. ambassador. How does that complicate things?
Yeah, so what you're going to have in these kind of situations, I've worked on evacuations in these war situations, is you will deploy everyone at the embassy, every U.S. official, no matter if you're an IT specialist, if you're diplomatic security, if you're a public affairs officer, you will be out there helping to coordinate Americans. And so you need as many people as possible. But Chris, again, this is an illustration of what was done wrong here. This is going to be a case study for the State Department going forward on how not to handle these kind of emergency situations, because you don't have enough of the right people. You're now trying to get both official Americans, American citizens out in the midst of very dangerous conditions. And we didn't have to subject our people to these risks. We know how to do this. We have done it time and time again. And somehow I think the Trump team just, forgot to look up, this stuff before they launched the attack.
I want to bring in Ines de la Cuetara, who is live in Jerusalem for us. Ines, I understand you just had to take shelter because of an alert. I wonder, can you tell us what happened and what you're hearing from people where you are?
Hey, Chris, yeah, so sirens going off again here in Jerusalem. So we are now down in the hotel shelter. I'll let you take a look here. People clearly waiting it out. This is the 6th time by our count that sirens have gone off in the different places that we've been in. We were in Tel Aviv earlier today, now in Jerusalem. So I will say there is a sense that the amount of sirens going off has gone down when you compare, the amount of sirens going off now compared to the first couple of days of the war. But there is clearly very much still an ongoing threat. Just today, there was at one point incoming fire from both Iran and Hezbollah at the same time. The number of casualties rising across the region, of course, so over 1,000 people killed in Iran. That's according to Iranian officials, 52 in Lebanon. Here in Israel, we are at 13 killed so far, and those 6 American service members also who were killed. The sentiment here in Israel, people we've been talking to are very much on board with the operation in Iran. One man telling me, they've been living with this constant threat of attacks for years now, and so they want Israel and the U.S. to finish the job. They are bracing for much worse. There is hope that the U.S. and Israel are quickly taking out the Iranian ballistic missile capabilities, and we heard defense, Pentagon officials earlier today talking about how the number of ballistic missiles fired was down 86%. The hope is that they're going to keep doing that, but they are also at the same time bracing for the worst. We've been visiting underground hospitals. Earlier today, we were at a national dispatch center where they kind of coordinate all the emergency response, and officials there telling us they are preparing for mass casualty events.
All right, thank you so much for that, Ines. So, Chris, that brings me back to, and I don't know if any of the folks who are there with her are people who are trying to get out of country. Having said that, is there a way for the U.S. government now, knowing that the planning doesn't look like it was what it should have been, knowing that the staffing on the ground is not what might be ideal, can they get ahead of it now?
They can catch up, and certainly General Kane touched on it this morning, comparing and contrasting him, a career professional. He's giving people some comfort with his competency and his legitimacy compared to the former Fox weekend host and Saturday Night Live content contributor who's playing Secretary of War right now. But DOD does these things in partnership, and they will surge the resources. General Kane talked about Space A, which are flights that are coming in and bringing materials and putting people on those military flights on the way out. Contract air, for sure. But then the U.S. military in both the Mediterranean and in the Gulf region can start using helicopters to come in and get people out of hard-to-reach areas and bring them back onto the ship and transport them somewhere else. The U.S. military has done this successfully for years, and not all of them are as ugly as the end of Afghanistan. So the capability is there as long as we start relying on career professionals like General Kane and others. And frankly, these are the effects of decimating those professionals out of the U.S. government. Now you have unqualified, unserious people running key components of it, including protecting the homeland. Let's not forget, Kristi Noem and Kesh Patel are in charge of protecting the homeland from the threat of the Iranians here.
So, Julia, Secretary Hegseth said the U.S. isn't backing off. And as of today, at least, Iran isn't either, obviously. So what's the latest you learned?
Well, Chris, I was at the rare Pentagon briefing this morning where we were able to hear from Secretary Hegseth and Chairman Kane. And Hegseth said that the U.S. is going to take all the time it needs to accomplish this mission, noting that we're 4 days in. And according to Hegseth, within about a week, the U.S. and Israel will have complete control of Iranian airspace, which will allow the U.S. to strike deeper into Iran. So really touting the accomplishment there of the Sky campaign and noting that Iran's barrages of ballistic missiles and drones has drastically decreased in recent hours and the past 24 hours alone. So Hegseth touting that the Iranian Air Force is decimated, and he said the Iranian Navy is no more. He cited a couple of examples of that, the first being that for the first time since World War II, the U.S. used a torpedo to sink an Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean. And Hegseth took a lighter tone when he referenced a ship sunk overnight named after Qasem Soleimani, the commander who President Trump assassinated in his first term, saying that Trump got the last laugh there and got to sink him twice, essentially. And that wasn't the only time Hegseth struck sort of a glib tone. I want you to take a listen to what he said, criticizing coverage of this military operation, particularly with regard to the 6 American soldiers' lives that were lost. Here's what he said.
This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality.
Now, the front page news he's referring to are the 6 lives lost in Kuwait as the result of an Iranian drone strike. And that's an area that the U.S. military has been really struggling with. It's really hard to intercept those drones. And another topic that came up at today's briefing that officials were pressed on were the concerns over shortage of U.S. munitions. And Hegseth and Kane both dismissed those concerns. Hegseth said that the arsenal is extremely strong, and Kane said that they have enough munitions to carry out this mission, which as of right now does not have a set timeline, Chris.
This ain't playing?
Involved so far is too much. In the Liberal Democrats' case, they are concerned that it's a slippery slope and want Parliament to have a say. In the Green Party's case, they go further. They say that this is an illegal war of which the UK should have no truck whatsoever, and that the UK ought to be publicly and full-throatedly condemning the US. On the other side of the argument, you have the Conservative Party and Reform.
Okay, this ain't what I thought it was. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. This ain't what I thought it was.
China would probably be happier going to war to try and open the Strait of Hormuz than trying to find a new oil supplier and sort out their economy. And because of this, China is now incredibly mad, and they've threatened that if these countries do not stop fighting and Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz, then China might have to get involved. And then things will really be escalating, because not only the US will be attacking Iran, but we could be looking at China saying this is a red line, and it would be the first conflict China is involved in, to my knowledge, ever really in the last 100 years. And so, leave me a follow, because if China gets involved, this is a big deal.
Okay, guys, major breaking news. This war has now officially entered Asia. We're unlocking new parts of this map every day, so 140 people are currently missing after a US submarine has sunk an Iranian Navy ship with a torpedo in international waters off the coast of Sri Lanka. Now, important detail, this is the first time that America has sunk an enemy ship using a torpedo since World War II. And if you guys are wondering where Sri Lanka is, here. This is the Indian Ocean. Everything that's usually been happening, kind of the war zone of 3,000 miles, is about here. Now, we're entering this territory. Ain't no way. Now, this was confirmed by the U.S. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, saying that America is winning decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. 180 people were reportedly on this boat. Ship. It's not a boat. And so far, 32 people have been rescued, with 140 more currently missing. I think we kind of get the point of what's happened to them. Hey guys, breaking news. NATO is now involved. They have just said that one of the member states has been targeted by Iran. So according to Turkey's defense ministry, they said that NATO air defense systems had to shoot down an Iranian missile that was traveling towards their airspace. And a fragment of that missile has fallen into an open area in southern Turkey. Now, fortunately for the escalation of this war, there was no loss of life or injuries reported. A NATO spokesperson has come out and told CNN that they condemn Iran's targeting of Turkey, and they said that they stand firmly with all allies. Turkey's defense ministry then said that we reiterate that we reserve our right to respond to any hostile act directed towards our country. This is believed to be the first time that NATO has got involved. History yet again.
All right. NATO getting involved, saying, hey, yo, y'all cool it there a little. That's a little warning shot. Slow your roll, Iran. And China saying, listen, y'all are not going to play with our money. Like we've been talking about since Monday, this is always about oil. Regime change is about oil. China being involved is about oil. It's all money. You start playing and affecting with these superpowers' money, it's going to be a problem. We're going to get World War III, and we already talked about that on Monday. It's not here yet. China gets involved, NATO starts getting ramped up. Things are going to get crazy. This is going to seem like this is a play date between the US and Iran, okay? Now, let me go next to the video that literally blew my mind when I saw it. Look at the difficulties that Iran has to go through to strike one missile in Israel. Look at this.
Fires 10 missiles at Israel, and even one of those missiles successfully hits its target. It would be considered a major success for Iran, because targeting Israel from Iran is extremely difficult. As soon as Iran launches missiles, they are first targeted by American Patriot defense systems deployed in Iraq, where the United States has military bases. The missiles that survive this phase then enter the airspace of Syria and Jordan. By that time, Israeli Air Force fighter jets are already mobilized, and they enter Syrian airspace to try to intercept and shoot down the missiles. We know that Jordan is also assisting Israel, and Jordan itself attempts to intercept the missiles to prevent them from reaching Israel. Despite all this, the missiles that get close to Israel's borders are then targeted by American naval warships deployed in the Mediterranean Sea. Any missiles that still manage to enter Israel must then face Israel's 5-layered defense system, which includes Arrow missile system, THAAD system, Patriot system, David Sling, Iron Dome. Remarkably, despite all these defensive measures, some Iranian missiles still manage to evade the defense systems and ultimately strike cities such as Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Okay. So this is what I've been trying to explain to you guys. Iran does not have the capabilities, the missiles, the technology that Israel and the US have. But as long as they have a missile that can at least just get in the air, and we explained to you yesterday that they have one that goes up and then splits into 80, all of those defenses, the planes, the ships that are trying to intercept these not so amazing missiles, one just has to get through. And you know how much money it literally costs? Whether something is a supersonic, incredible technology missile or just a normal rinky-dink missile, it still costs the same amount to defend it and shoot it out the air. That is how Iran is winning. And again, please do not misunderstand me and think that I'm applauding them or rooting for them in any way possible. I do not want to hear that in the comment section. All I'm just trying to tell you is strategy. And their strategy is smart. You're going up against a superpower. You're going up against somebody who you can't defeat. What are you going to do? You're just going to throw up crappy missiles and have them waste all of their money and all of their energy shooting down my crap out the air. Whether it's a $10,000 missile or a $50 million missile, it's the same. The U.S. and Israel have to spend millions of dollars to shoot it out the air, and it's a smart strategy. Okay, let's go over now to this. Well, let's get over to this military commander saying that Donald Trump was appointed by Jesus. And then I'm going to play a video for you of a professor that is going to break down this war and saying and predicting that the U.S. will lose this war and how this will expose and burst the U.S. economy. Actually, you know what? I want to go to the U.S. economy first one because this is amazing to see. It's 2.5 minutes, but please pay attention because what he's saying is logical, and I'm not saying his prediction will 100% be right, but if you listen and you've been watching what's been going on for the past 72 hours, he has some strong points, and I really want to know what you guys think. Take a listen, and then we'll go over to the Donald Trump being appointed by Jesus. Take a listen.
3 big predictions. 1, that Trump would win. 2, that he would start a war with Iran. And 3, that the U.S. would lose that war. It's quite a stunning prediction. Do you stand by it?
The reality is that right now, it's a war of attrition between the United States and Iran. And the Iranians have been preparing 20 years for this conflict. And now they have a pretty good strategy of how to weaken and ultimately destroy the American empire. So what the Iranians are doing is they're waging war against the entire global economy. And so they are striking the GCC countries. They're going after the critical energy infrastructure. They blocked off the Strait of Hormuz. And eventually, they will go after the water desalination plants, which is the lifeblood of these nations because they don't have fresh water supply. The Iranians are actually threatening the very existence of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar. And why this is important is that the Gulf states are really the linchpin of the American economy. So what they do is they sell petrodollars and then they recycle the petrodollars back into the American economy through the investments in the stock market. And right now, we know that the entire American economy is propped up by AI investments in data centers. And a lot of that comes from the Gulf states. So if the Gulf states are no longer able to sell oil, and they're no longer able to finance AI, this AI bubble in the United States, then this AI bubble will burst, and with it will burst as well the entire American economy, which is really a financial Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, sir, an Amazon data center was literally hit in the UAE. And we also wanted to talk to you about munition. The United States is racing to accomplish Iran mission before munitions run out.
The United States military is not designed to fight a 21st century war. Remember, the military-industrial complex came to being after World War II and was designed to fight the Cold War. And the Cold War was really about muscle flexing, who was to first get the person on the moon. And so the entire American military strategy revolves around very sophisticated technology that costs a lot of money to build. And that's what the American air defense system is. And that's why we're seeing this asymmetry in this war, where you have these $1 million missiles trying to take out these $50,000 drones. And it's not sustainable in the long term. And so what we're seeing is really the puncturing of the aura of invincibility that sustained American hegemony for the past 20 years.
Think about what he's saying and tell me it doesn't make sense. Iran literally just has to hit countries that are in the Gulf area that supply all the oil everywhere. They have to shut down a canal that 30% of the oil that gets exported to the world go through that little channel of Hormuz, I think it's called. And the fact that they just shut that down, that got China saying, yo, what's going on here? They are being so strategic. The US and Donald Trump, you know how Donald Trump is. We have the biggest army in the world. We have 20 that stealth plane, I think it's the B-52 that goes undetected. They could drop all the biggest bombs and crazy stuff in the world. But if Iran could stop the flow of oil and stop the flow of money and expose that AI bubble, what happens then? Again, I'm not saying it's going to work, and I'm not rooting for it to work. I'm just saying, when your back is up against the wall, you think of the necessity is the mother of all invention. The U.S. has all the money in the world. They have an easy strategy. The U.S., their military was built for destruction. You know that is Donald Trump. We'll bomb everybody. But when you're in need, when you're hungry, when you got no food and you got no money, trust me, you think in different ways, in different patterns. And sometimes that could be your advantage. Just think about it. I cannot wait to discuss that with you guys in the comment section. Now, let's go to this military commander that swears that Donald J. Trump was anointed by Jesus himself to start this war in Iran. Take a listen.
News right now, a United States military commander is alleged to have told their troops below them that Donald Trump was anointed, quote, anointed by Jesus to lead the United States into war with Iran. This is follow-up reporting to the prior report that essentially the Huffington Post cited and others that the war in Iran was biblically divine, essentially invoking Christianity into the war. I want you to look at this email that was sent to the Military Religious Freedom, a nonprofit whistleblower organization that's exposing the, quote, Mr. Weinstein, thank you for taking my calls and calls of some of my colleagues as to what happened earlier this morning in our combat unit. I am a blank in our unit. This morning, Commander opened up combat readiness status briefing by urging us not to be afraid as to what is happening with combat operations in Iran. He urged us to tell our troops that this was all part of God's divine plan. And he specifically referenced numerous citations out of the book of Revelation referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. He said that President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to earth. He had a big grin on his face and said all of this, which made his message even more crazy. This is pretty crazy stuff. I'll have more updates for you soon. Feel free to go read the full report on the Huffington Post website. They did a write-up on it as well. Spread the word.
Absolutely crazy. I always say this every time I talk about Trump supporters. I have never seen support that is that extensive. Like, to the delusion that some MAGA followers and Republican and Donald Trump people, it needs to be studied. And I don't mind MAGA supporters. But I just told you guys yesterday, my neighbor who I'm very, very close with is a starch MAGA supporter. But he's not ready to jump off the cliff and say that he was anointed by Jesus. I have a video for you of Nick Fuentes, who is a stark MAGA Republican, saying, like, this is crazy. It needs to be studied. Okay, let's go on now to the U.S. having military operations in Ecuador. Now, a lot of people are, I think, using this opportunity to kind of highlight Donald Trump. But if you listen to this report carefully, you'll see that Ecuador military and government are side by side. So everyone's looking, saying, Trump is in Iran, Trump is in Venezuela, Trump wants to go to Cuba, and now he's in Ecuador. This man wants to take over the world. Listen to the report carefully, okay?
I have some news right now. The United States military has launched operations in Ecuador this evening. Alongside Ecuadorian military officials, the United States Southern Command has announced that U.S. military forces launched operations against, quote, designated terrorist organizations in Ecuador. So you have U.S. military personnel operating now in Ecuador. You had U.S. military personnel operating in Venezuela. You have U.S. military personnel operating in Iran. You had U.S. military operating in Nigeria. And that doesn't include the many other countries where in the past year the United States military has conducted airstrikes across the world. Now, tonight's military operations in Ecuador are being conducted alongside the Ecuadorian military, and Southern Command says that they are taking, quote, decisive action to confront narco-terrorists who have long inflicted terror, violence, and corruption on citizens within the hemisphere. Spread the word, follow for more.
You cannot,
Ecuadorian military.
You cannot fault President Trump and his administration when the report is they're alongside the Ecuadorian military, meaning that the government is thankful for the administration to be there. Now, can you say that Trump is, spreading the military thin? You could say that, but that is exactly what people like about Donald Trump and his administration is they get things done. They are not slacking off. They are not sitting back saying, yeah, we won. Okay, yeah, we're in control. They're getting things done. Now, is it for Donald Trump's own, like there's a reason why he's there, just like there's a reason why he's in Iran and there's a reason why he's in Venezuela. But I just think a lot of people are missing the fact that the Ecuadorian military are side by side working together to go after the terrorists, okay? Now, let's jump over to a follow-up story. Yesterday, I told you guys about Donald Trump sitting down and saying that he wants to cut off ties with the president of Spain, or sorry, just Spain in particular, because of the decisions from the president. He said that he wanted everybody, all the NATO countries, to go from 2% to contribute 5%. He said the only NATO country that did not want to join is Spain. And then he also said that Spain doesn't want to allow the U.S. To use their naval bases. And then he said, I don't even care what they say. I'll go and use it if I want to. Again, some people look at that and say, this is not the kind of diplomacy that we want from the U.S. And some people are going to look and say, I like that my president will just go and take over anyone's naval base. That is up to you to decide. Here is a follow-up of what the president of Spain had to say. Take a listen.
So Donald Trump just announced he is ceasing trade and all relationships with Spain. The reason being that Spain would not allow the U.S. to use the joint bases in the attack on Iran. He called Spain terrible, said they were uncooperative, they were just awful, then kind of issued a veiled threat saying, well, we could use the bases if we wanted to, no one would stop us. And I've always loved Spain, but I love them even more now. But I wanted to read a quote from the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, because I think this really catches the temperature of what's going on with Iran, how two truths can exist at once, and really the attitude of, I think, most people regarding the conflict in Iran. Prime Minister Sanchez gave a speech in Barcelona on Sunday saying, today more than ever, it's vital to remember that you can be against a hateful regime as Spanish society as a whole when it comes to the Iranian regime, and at the same time against an unjustified and dangerous military intervention that is outside of international law. Exactly. In the few days that since this happened, we have already had confirmation that there was no U.S. intelligence that said Iran was close to having a nuclear weapon or that they were planning any kind of attack. This is an unjustified attack, and you can be against a terrible, abusive regime and also understand that this is an unjustified attack that they're actively lying about for their own self-interest. If we were really interested in things like democracy, there are so many places in the world where women can't go outside. The Taliban just passed a law allowing women to be beaten by their husbands provided he doesn't break bones. But not only has the U.S. not intervened, we haven't even said anything, because this isn't about democracy. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about oppression, but it's about questions of sovereignty. Do other nations have sovereignty even when the U.S. has a vested interest in taking over or managing their resources for them? So I think that Prime Minister Sanchez captured that perfectly, that you can be against an abusive totalitarian regime and also be against abuses of power coming from outside that regime.
So basically, yeah, I don't think things are going to get better between Spain and President Trump. We shall see, okay? Now, the second video that I'm very excited to play for you guys is Nick Fuentes. Now, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was Derek who I was having a conversation with by saying that, yo, there's some Republicans that are saying, yo, you need to vote Democrat. And I shouldn't call Derek out because I'm not sure who it was. Somebody in the comment section said, Republicans are not going to vote Democrat. Here's Nick Fuentes saying how disappointed he is, how disappointed MAGA is in what is going on with Donald Trump and his administration. And I like to see people who are supporters, but then could also call somebody out. The way how I will call out Donald Trump, how I will call out Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. Anybody can get it. That is the way that you are supposed to have an opinion, in my opinion. But some of y'all want to be biased. Take a listen to Nick Fuentes.
Horrifying. And so, but I can't sign on to covering up Epstein. I can't sign on to World War III. And so that's why I tried to promote the optimism, because I eat this, man. Like, I want to fix the country. I want to turn it around. So it's not that I was delusional. I still hope we can turn it around, but I just, sorry, go ahead. You get what I'm saying?
I get it. And listen, totally unraveling. It's an utter and complete betrayal. It's heartbreaking in many ways. It's okay to have hope. I mean, we hope for a better future, but we got to be brutally honest about what this administration. We need in 2026 for this administration to be shut the down. What does this administration do other than cover up the Epstein files, embezzle money through government contracts, and bring us to war for Israel? This administration needs to be shut down immediately. Do not vote in the midterms, and if you do, vote for Democrats.
That is crazy coming from Nick Fuentes. If you guys don't know who Nick Fuentes is, after the show, Google him, okay? There is nobody more on the right than Nick Fuentes. All right? Another MAGA Republican lost by the Trump administration. I don't see any path in the midterms for the Republicans to win if things stay the way how they are. Talking about Trump and talking about his administration, we're going to play you a video from Kristi Noem, head of the DHS, that between her, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel, I don't understand how they are still employed. This is ridiculous. We have seen mistake after mistake after mistake in Minnesota, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at her Congress meeting, they showed her a video of a plane that she bought. Listen to her excuse of why she needed a plane it's a luxury jet, by the way, okay, that has a bed and a conference room.
Okay, we're done here. Thank y'all for being here. Like, share, subscribe. See y'all later. Peace.